So if you're planning a move to the Denver area and you've started looking at Denver's west side, there are two places that come up quite a bit, and that's Arvada and Lakewood. And if you're not familiar with either one, well, they can look pretty similar online, which makes it hard to know which one actually would be a more natural fit, or if either one makes sense for how you want your day-to-day to work. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how they compare in real life. This way you can start to figure out which one would be a stronger fit. Or maybe after watching the video, you may decide you want to keep exploring. And that's perfectly fine too. Okay, let's start with how each area feels overall, because this is usually where people first start to notice a difference. Now, when we look at Arvada, there's generally a stronger sense of a central hub. And this is especially around Old Town Arvada. Now, Old Town is one of the more recognizable gathering areas on the west side. They've got restaurants, shops, and light rail access into Denver. And they have blocked off Main Street so you can walk between restaurants and shops, and you don't even have to worry about traffic. You will find that many parts of Arvada, they tend to feel connected. They're connected to that central area. And if you want a closer look at what that area is actually like day to day, I do have a separate video on living in downtown Arvada, where I walk through that in more detail. But overall, it creates a more defined sense of place. Now, in Lakewood, it feels a little different. It's more spread out, and different neighborhoods can feel quite different depending on where you actually are. There are areas like Belmar which offer a more modern feel, with shops, restaurants, and events. But overall, Lakewood doesn't revolve around one central hub the same way that Arvada does. So right away, one tends to feel more centered while the other feels a bit more distributed. And it's important that we look at location and how that impacts your day-to-day, because this is one of those areas that often matters more once you're actually living here. Now, when looking at the map, you'll see that Arvada sits a little further north on the west side of the metro. So if your routine includes heading towards the northwest part of the metro or in the direction of Boulder, well, that can feel pretty convenient. At the same time, depending on where you're going regularly into Denver, it can feel a bit more removed. Now for Lakewood, it's more central. And it's located along the west side. So getting into downtown Denver or heading towards the mountains, well, that often feels a little bit more direct depending on your starting point. And this is one of those differences that may not seem much at first, but over time, even small shifts in how you move around can really change your day-to-day and how it feels. And it's just something to take into consideration. Now, looking at housing, because this is where a lot of the trade-offs start to show up. Now in Arvada, neighborhoods tend to feel more consistent. You often see ranch-style homes, updated properties, and even some newer development. And it's grouped in a way that feels more uniform. And when you're looking at Lakewood, there's typically more variation. You're going to find older homes, some remodeled homes, you'll see some townhomes, and even some newer communities. And these homes are often within closer proximity to each other. So if you prefer a more consistent feel from one area to the next, Arvada often provides that. But if you want more flexibility and a wider range of options, Lakewood tends to offer more variety. Now, when it comes to pricing, that's something that's always changing, and it depends on the market. So rather than trying to cover that here, I do break that down in my market update videos, where I go into the current numbers and trends. So be sure to check that out. But for today's comparison, what tends to matter more is how each area functions and what you're actually getting in terms of layout, location, and your day-to-day use. Now, thinking about how each area is typically used day to day, this is where things really start to separate out a bit. Because in Lakewood, access is a key factor. It often allows for relatively easy movement between different parts of the metro, whether that's heading into Denver or towards the mountains. And that includes access to outdoor areas. Now, many parts of Lakewood, well, they sit closer to the foothills, which can make getting to trails and open space much easier. There are places, and some of them my favorites, like Green Mountain Park or Bear Creek Lake Park. And these are well known for hiking, biking, and spending time outdoors. Now, many people use Lakewood as a central base, with flexibility to move in different directions. And in Arvada, you'll find more of a local rhythm, with areas like Old Town and nearby amenities. People often spend more time within the area itself. Now, not to worry, Arvada still offers some strong access to parks and trails and certainly open space. And be sure to check out places like Ralston Creek Trail. But with these open spaces, it can feel a little bit more integrated into the community, rather than right up against the foothills like you will see in Lakewood. Now, another notable feature in Arvada is the Arvada Center for the Arts and Humanities. And this adds another layer of how the area is used. Now, in Lakewood, Belmar plays a somewhat similar role, but has more of a focus on the retail, dining, and the events. So again, Arvada tends to feel more centered and locally focused, while Lakewood tends to function more as a flexible access-oriented location. So how does this translate into overall fit? Well, Arvada may make more sense if you prefer a more defined layout with a clear central area and a more consistent feel. And that feel is across neighborhoods. While Lakewood may make more sense if you prefer flexibility, if you're looking for a wider range of options, and more direct access to public parts of the metro. And just as important, where might each not align as well, Arvada may not feel as convenient. If your routine requires frequent travel, if you're traveling across different parts of the metro, Lakewood may not feel as cohesive if you prefer a stronger sense of a central area. And at the end of the day, both Arvada and Lakewood are strong options if you're relocating to cities near Denver and looking for options west of Denver. It's less about which one is better. It's more about which one makes the most sense. Makes the most sense for how you'll actually use the area once you're here. And if you're continuing to narrow things down on the west side, I'd recommend watching my Golden versus Littleton video next. And if you want a closer at what it looks like to feel in Old Town Arvada, don't forget, you can also check out my Downtown Arvada video. And remember, life is short, live somewhere awesome, and be well. We'll see you next time.